So thank you, Enrico, for meeting with me and being my mentor for in this Teach Now program.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you very much. So you had a chance to look over the standards that we have to abide by and the lesson plan that I have created in concerning these standards. So is there anything, any complications, any problems that you see with this that hasn't met the standards that we are discussing?
It does seem to me it's well positioned to meet the standards. It's very well organized, well structured, down to very technical level of what you're going to do exactly throughout the class. What are your objectives for each section of the class? So I think it's pretty solid.
The problem that I have with the text is that in many ways it can be looked at as arcane language because some of the texts provide our historical documents from the 1700s, 1800s, and early 20th century when we no longer speak in that fashion. So the kids have a hard time understanding the language. But then trying to find something that is comparable and compatible that works within the criteria that we're looking at, especially with the AP level, makes it a little bit harder in choice. To make something that is more up to date and along the same terms. I did select some things that are very recent in the last 20 years that make the language a little bit more compatible to them, but I still think it's also more appropriate for them to be looking at the vocabulary level as well.
Right.
Because this is the AP level, so they need to increase their vocabulary level, especially if they're going to be taking the SAT. Right. The other thing that I just wanted to make sure that I got everything in according to is looking at skill category 3 and identification of the claims. And the hardest part we have in that is trying to do that with the advertisements, because advertisements have a specific purpose. But then if you look at political cartoons, there are some things that are appropriate, some things that are not appropriate for the class. So I have a hard time judging what would be appropriate and what not be appropriate for that. What do you suggest I could look at and make sure that it's appropriate?
But in terms of the political cartoons or,
Yes.
or the advertisements? Well, the political cartoons, I mean, we're working in China.
Yeah.
So we have actually, that's kind of advantageous in the sense that it's very clearly spelled out by the government what is considered appropriate to cover or not. I mean, you have entire issues that are basically off the table. I would say with political cartoons, as long as it doesn't directly relate to China, and doesn't really relate to, couldn't be interpreted as encouraging, major political dissent. It's just, like I said, it's annoying because we have a certain amount of censorship that we have to deal with, but it's also very clear what we cannot cover.
Okay.
So outside of that, generally we're fine.
All right, cool. If you got a quick question about the formative assessments and as well as solidifying the norms and rules. Now we're already into the second half of the first term, so those are pretty much solidified.
Right.
But what do you think about the formative assessments that I have set up for this?
How often are you doing them?
At least once a week. And usually I do it on a Friday. With the quizzes, because Friday is the end of the week, so I want to make it a fun time for them. And using the Quizlet app makes them have a live game process, so they can go into teams and compete against each other and answering the same questions, which is really cool. But I also need to make sure that I cover what is needed to be covered with the AP course board that we're using as well, the classroom. But sometimes I use those as maybe as an entrance ticket. Here's an essay, find the answer, you got 5 minutes, go. So I want to make sure that whatever I set up is going to be flowing well with how I set up this lesson plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the purpose of formative assessment is basically to get a snapshot of where your students are. So it's clear to you, and it's also clear to them where they're at. Have they are they learning what they're supposed to be learning? Do they have a solid grasp of the concepts that they need to know? I think with AP Classroom, College Board has made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I haven't used it in my own teaching, but I know you've made extensive use of it. So, I mean, these are designed specifically for the courses. So, as far as following the standards, that should solve that issue. But it looks like, yeah, with the entry ticket quiz, multiple choice quizzes. This is basically what formative assessment should be. As long as it's giving you a clear idea, like it's
All right.
giving you solid data on where your students are. That's the main point for you.
Okay. Um, and looking at the differentiation teaching aspect of it, and those kids that since they are ELL,
Mm-hmm.
um, do you think that I should be using more technology in the classroom to help the lower end English students, or allow them to use e-dictionaries instead of paper dictionaries to make the class go faster?
Um. Well, it depends how effective the technology is, because it's not necessarily the case that technology helps lower level language learners learn
Well,
better.
for example, if like having them produce a 2-minute video of them speaking about the particular topic, which
That
increases
that that might be more effective and more engaging for some students. And it's
Mhm.
also about to do with has to do with students' learning styles,
Right.
and how they prefer to learn. With the dictionaries, I think a key thing is to make sure time is not wasted in the classroom. So it really depends on how you manage that. Different teachers have different opinions about whether to use those or not. Um, I don't like students to get too reliant on dictionaries in the classroom because it just eats up time, and we have 40 minutes,
Right.
sometimes
Right.
less. But if you can manage it effectively,
Well, I think that they should be using it to look up words in their homework time.
yeah,
Okay. And then so when they come to class, they're already prepared for that, and we can use it in the classroom
agreed,
itself.
agreed.
But sometimes when you're looking at a new text, you come across new word, new vocabulary words. So there has to be at least a little bit of time allotted for the looking up in their e-dictionaries or their paper dictionary. I really don't have a preference. I think the e-dictionaries are much faster, but looking up at a paper dictionary teaches them how to search and research for the words and then find
Yeah.
a proper definition instead of having it given
Yeah.
to them in an electronic
There's
sense.
also the e-dictionary. Sometimes the results, at least what I've seen from the ones our students have, they
Mhm.
give you a wide array of results. Some of them are not accurate. Some of them are, scientific terminology. That's
Yeah.
so it's paper
Right.
dictionaries are much more standardized.
Cool. Okay. So again, up to me on how I want to proceed further with that. All right. If you want to take a look at the 21st century skills, I just want to make sure that I'm not. I think there's more that I could do, but I don't want to, put too much on the student's shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there another one that you think I could scaffold onto this?
Just for this particular lesson.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think this is sufficient. I mean, you don't want to pile, like you said, you don't want to pile too much. There's only so much you can do in a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is already quite a good range. You've got the discussion, but you've also got the researching. Using technology for research in conjunction with a textbook, critical thinking. That's already quite a lot, actually, for a single lesson. So I think this is pretty on track.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday in my lesson that I did with the students, I actually found some websites that were like brain teasers or quizzes on just general information, just general questions, something that they had to think about. For the most part, I mean, in the critical thinking aspect, they did get them all right. A couple of them got it wrong, but that's how they look at things. And then I did a claim. I posted a claim on the board, and we got into one student got into a huge discussion about that particular claim that I made, and I had them discuss it, like, why do you think this is right or why do you think this is wrong? And the problem they had was they focused only on one sport, and instead of the concept of sports in general. Is there a way for me to reteach that, where I can make that it's a concept of sports in general claim, as opposed to just having them just think about one sport?
Well, why do you think that student kind
He
of narrowed
prefers
it down?
football.
So he knows more about
Yeah.
it. Okay. It's really, a lot depends on how you present the question and what options you leave to them. I find, for example, it's never very fruitful to say, discuss this, because Some good students will discuss that and only that, but they'll go off in different tangents, and some of them will just go totally off task. I generally err on the side of giving our students as specific directives as possible. Discuss this for X amount of time, and answer this, this, and this. Right, so I have a concrete outcome, and then it's easier to keep students on task. So if you want them to consider sports in general, I just think that needs to be very clear in how
Well,
you direct them.
right. Well, the claim was a specific claim. There is nothing that sports can teach me that I cannot learn through music.
Mm-hmm.
It's a general claim. It doesn't say about any particular sports.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what can I learn through music that I can't learn in sports?
Mm-hmm.
Or what can I learn in sports that I can't learn in music?
Mm-hmm.
So they had a target that they had to meet already. And working in pairs, they had to discuss what they learn in sports as compared to what can they learn from music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they got sidetracked, because as in their thinking is, well, it's just one sport.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but learning how to play basketball, well, that's in PE class. That's not a sport.
Mm-hmm.
We already know how to play the sport. So I just want to make sure that when I look at the 21st century, you know, and I look at the formative assessments, that when I make this claim and I have them discuss it, I am reaching the goal that I need to reach, which is having them think critically, having them assess what they need to find out the research, get those points out from every specific aspect of it, and then present it.
Well, I mean, with that particular prompt, it seems that the point is what you're learning, not what specific sport or what specific instrument.
Right.
So I might start that, you know, I might just do an activity with the class. We kind of have two columns. What do we learn from sports versus what do we learn from music? And keep it at that general level. I mean, there's
Right.
different ways you can do it, but the key is not either which specific sport or which specific type of music or instrument. It's what are you learning? What are the skills needed in general?
Okay. So I think though, but would you say that in doing that kind of thing, I did meet the requirements for a 21st century skill, because they did collaborate with each other?
Yes,
They
yeah.
were talking about it?
Yeah, I would definitely
You know.
say so.
Okay. Cool. Do you think there's any changes that you want to see me made on the lesson plan that I could make my class better?
Well, I'd like to see basically look at the class at the end of the week, at the end of this teaching period, and kind of see where they're at, and then I would have a more informed opinion about that. Right now I'm looking at the lesson plan. It's very detailed, and you give me your feedback about how the class has gone so far. I'd like to see the next class, where are the students, and then maybe I could see. So right now I don't really have too much of a basis, but later on I could.
Okay. Cool. All right. Great. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
All right.